over at BangTheBook.com. We are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. All 39 bowl games, FBS bowl games anyway, previewed over there at the website. Our cast of writers did a fantastic job with those. Definitely make sure that you check those out. Also, take a look at Parker Michaels' daily NHL picks. He's been having a great run here so far this season. You don't want to miss a single day of those. NBA, NHL, college basketball situational betting articles, also posted over there at the website. And if you go check out our YouTube page, go to youtube.com, search, Bang the Book. You'll find videos from Brian Blessing here later today or early tomorrow. But you'll also find that I'm doing some videos over there. So you can confirm the fact that I have a face for radio, but doing some videos over there on our Bang the Book YouTube page. Today will be my Tuesday 3-pack article with my 3 favorite plays of the night. Wednesday, I'll do a Wednesday weekend look ahead. A Thursday 3-pack coming up on Thursdays. Then we'll do something a little bit fun and lighthearted for Friday. So make sure you check out our YouTube page over there and see everything that we've got going on. We got 2 guests coming your way on today's program. The first one is Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Brian, how's it going today, man?
Hey, Adam. How you doing, buddy?
Doing very well. Appreciate your time as always, sir. Thank you so much for joining me. Busy time of the year, to be sure. We'll talk some NFL here today, NHL, and then also the college football bowl season with you a little bit. Let's start in the NFL here, Brian, and something I want to touch on regarding last weekend, and something I talked about with Joe Everett on yesterday's show, is that, a lot of these teams that we expected to be quitters or maybe not give much of an effort really stepped up. The Jets, who we'll talk about here in a little bit, beating the Buffalo Bills. We saw Cincinnati hang within the number against the Chargers the whole game. Detroit goes out on the road and wins in impressive fashion over Arizona. And then, of course, Oakland outright. I'm starting to think that maybe we kind of overblow this idea that NFL teams are just not going to show up.
They're playing for jobs, bud. I mean, the bottom line is, fan bases can look at draft picks and, rebuilding and always start looking to the mock drafts and things of that nature. But the guys that are on the team now, it's survival of the fittest. They're playing for jobs. They're trying to impress. Could be a new coach coming in or a new GM, or showcasing themselves around the league because, some teams are ready to blow things up. At the end of the day, I mean, that's the bottom line. They're playing for jobs.
Yeah, they are. And, another thing, too, and we kind of talked about this a little bit here the last couple of weeks on Bang the Book Radio, if you don't go out there in the NFL and play 100%, you're going to get yourself hurt. So that's also a consideration, too. I mean, in the NBA, we know that tanking runs rampant. It's really not as big of sandbagging a little bit on special teams or whatever. But, really the NBA is the only league, I think, where teams just openly tank and just openly don't give an effort. So I think it's important to keep in mind here over the last 3 weeks of the NFL season where, there are some teams that you probably don't want to touch, but the reasons why you don't want to touch them may not be as accurate as you thought.
I mean, I would cite the Bills-Jets game this weekend, a perfect example of that. Obviously, both teams aren't going anywhere this year. It's about building for the future. But the Jets got absolutely decimated by the Bills a few weeks ago. I mean, Matt Barkley come off the street and beat them like a drum. And they talked all week long. They said it's personal. They embarrassed us. We don't like them. They don't like us. And to the Jets' credit, I mean, they showed up. They looked like they were about to get rolled and blown out, but they hung in there, and they showed a lot of fight. I mean, it's a team that's going nowhere. And know this, in the final stages of the month here, we're going to be getting all these rematches in the revenge scenario and the familiarity of division games. So, I mean, there'll be, even some teams that are out of this, there'll be some intensity because they're division games, and these teams, honestly, don't like each other.
Well, speaking of division games, the best game on the board here for Week 15 is Thursday night. The NFL's decided, hey, we want to put division games out there. Maybe it's to help the players because of the familiarity and usually the shorter travel than what we see here on Thursday. But I think it's also just the fact that, they really want, the fan bases invested in these Thursday night games, and this is one to be invested in. Chargers, Chiefs a 3.5-point favorite. There are some threes with Very heavy juice out there, but predominantly 3.5 in the market. Total of 53 for this one. Brian, I got to say, given the injury situations for both of these teams and the fact that it's the best game of the week, it's a damn shame that it's a Thursday night game.
Well, we spent a good 15, 20 minutes on this yesterday on Sportsbook Radio. The old money grab, right? I think the Thursday night thing, Fox came in and, bought into Thursday night, kind of saved the thing, and there was all the carping and moaning from the players and safety and playing on Thursday night. But this is just wrong. I mean, I know you don't know at the beginning of the year who's going to be good for the most part. I mean, these Thursday night things, they have got to find a way that there's a level playing field. If it's teams always coming off a bye to play on Thursday night, whatever it is. Andy Isco, who was on the show yesterday, brought up a good point. Maybe you do a bunch of Thursdays, but then maybe you actually do more of the Monday doubleheaders at the end. It's just ridiculous that a game of this importance, that literally San Diego, and they can win the game, but San Diego's getting thrown to the wolves. I mean, the road team on Thursday night literally plays a game on Sunday. They're in the ice tub on Monday. They do a walkthrough on Tuesday, and then they travel to the venue. These games are just too big, and I don't think in December that the Thursday night thing, should be, have such an impact on possibly what playoffs, who makes the playoffs, what the seeding may be. I think you're throwing San Diego kind of the wolves here, and I just think it's misguided. The other thing, I will say this. We try to do this on Tuesdays, Adam, and what do we always talk about? Trying to be smart, try to look down the road. I'm an idiot. I mean, to the nth degree that Cincinnati's running for the bus, Bill's the quarterback. They're going out to play the Chargers. And to everything I just talked about for 3 minutes, doesn't it stand to reason that the Chargers, even though they know you can't take somebody lightly, but wouldn't you believe that the Chargers invested probably as much time getting ready for the Chiefs game last week as they did getting ready for the Cincinnati game? And they're sitting there laying 14 on the road. In retrospect, I'm sitting there yesterday going, you're a moron, man. I mean, Cincinnati might have been the gift of our lifetime, and I didn't even see it.
Well, I mean, I can't say anything because I actually wound up taking the Chargers in the Super Contest because I just figured Cincinnati was done. After the embarrassing performance at home against Denver, after losing A.J. Green for the season, obviously they're without Andy Dalton, I just figured they'd be completely done because I think this Bengals team is also ready to move on from Marvin Lewis. I think they like him as a person, but I think they also realize – right. But I think that they also realize that, this guy's not going to get us anywhere. And, of course, now they bring Hugh Jackson back in, and I hope for Bengals fans they don't make that mistake and make him the head coach. But I felt like Cincinnati would completely mail that game in. I knew I was taking a chance with the Chargers being in the penultimate look-ahead spot. But, as it turned out, they never came close to covering that number. And I agree that they probably did put as much into the game plan for this Chiefs game as they did the Bengals game. The one thing that's nice for them is that they're not on the playoff bubble. I mean, at this point, they're basically in. It would take a catastrophic collapse and a bunch of stuff going wrong for them not to get in. But it is crucial if you can get that bye week there and skip that wild card game. It is crucial to try to win your division, and now they're really up against it. But I will say this, Brian. You look at this line out there. You consider Chargers basically going 2/3 of the way across the country, traveling across 2 time zones on a short week to take on a Kansas City team that has one of the best home field advantages in the NFL. And this line, through all of that, is only 3.5. The Chargers are getting a ton of respect in the market.
A ton of respect. I mean, this number, I'm not grabbing onto this number at all. I think Kansas City, Arrowhead, to me, is Arrowhead and Seattle are the 2 biggest home field advantages in the NFL. To me, they're worth 3.5, 4 points. So you're telling me on a neutral field this is a pick'em game? That's what they're telling you.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I sometimes the number tells you something. Oh, by the way, real quick, back to Sunday, just in terms of maybe being able to apply some of these things down the road, compound the fact that in the early game, Baltimore had Kansas City beat, and if you don't think the Chargers were paying attention to that score, and then all of a sudden Baltimore let the game get away, and then the Chargers had to go out and play. If Baltimore would have beat Kansas City, I bet you your Chargers pick would have been the right pick, because all of a sudden they would have said, wow, look at this, the door's open. I bet you in a weird way the result of that first game also took the air out of the balloon for the Chargers.
Yeah, I think so too. And that may be something that we see here over the next 3 weeks in the NFL, and most definitely week 16 and 17, because we've got so many teams on that playoff bubble. And I know that they try to start all the games there in week 17 at a similar time and all that kind of thing, but it doesn't always work out from a logistical standpoint. So that is something you definitely want to keep in mind here. By the way, I ran this query over at killersports.com. I've got a very good database over there. I was astonished to see, I triple check this, but teams coming off of an overtime game since the start of the 2015 season are just 43 and 73 against the spread the next week. So Kansas City in that spot here this week. Teams coming off of a win, 23 and 32. Teams coming off of a loss, just 18 and 35. So, it's one of those things where it's been very difficult for teams to come off of time games. Kansas City on a short week off of an overtime game. So, man, I'll tell you what, this is one of those games where just because it's a standalone game, you don't have to bet it. I think the context clues in the line tell us that maybe the Chargers are the right side and maybe the Chargers are as good as Kansas City. But situationally, it's a really bad spot, obviously, for the road team.
Oh, it's a horrible spot. And again, the number sometimes is like, well, it's like, what do they know? We don't know. But some of these teams, they do get a lot of respect on a week-to-week basis in terms of the respect from the odds makers. But listen, they're putting a number up, and then the market will decide it. I mean, I for the life of me, I don't know, but I can't see 3 popping up. You know what? There's actually 1 or 2 of them out there. 3 minus 25. I mean, I'd be betting that real quick. Wouldn't you think a common sense kind of thing? You're seeing 3.5 minus a dime. I got to believe when we get closer to kickoff, people are going to start talking about the stuff we're talking about. Come on, it's a short week, yada, yada, yada. Now, the Baltimore game is a hard-fought, physical game, and they expended a lot of energy. But I got to believe this number gets to 4, maybe 4.5.
Yeah, I mean, I would think for sure at some of the more public shops that are out there, stations out there for you, Bovada, MyBookie in the offshore market, 4 would not surprise me at all. I'd be curious to see if places like Pinnacle or the Greek would make the jump up to 4. I don't know. But again, it pisses me off to no end that, the NFL, there are a lot of optics problems with the NFL between all the, domestic assault suspensions and, all the things that go on here in this league. At least they've kind of done away with the targeting and some of the bad hits here for the most part this season. But I just don't know how you put yourself in a situation to have this game on a Thursday night in week 15. Like, when you're looking at the schedule here, I mean, Denver was not going to be a contender. Oakland was not going to be a contender. It's a mistake. And the problem is, too, you can flex a game from, 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. on a Sunday, but there is no way in hell you can take a team playing on a Sunday and tell them, hey, you suck, you're going to play on Thursday night. So it's not a good look at all. And when this game doesn't live up to expectations, it's going to look worse.
On paper, I think coming in, it would have been reasonable to say that it was going to be Kansas City 1, San Diego 2. Raiders had a lot of work to do. Denver's, kind of middle tier. Coming into the beginning of the season, I don't think it probably was most people's projections. KC 1, San Diego 2. Maybe not as close as it is now. I always say it's San Diego. I can't get out of my head. The Chargers. I mean, right on paper, wouldn't you have thought, okay, they're probably the top 2 teams in the AFC West. Yeah, week 15, let's throw them on a Thursday night game. I mean, even just reading the tea leaves here, it's even more egregious.
Yeah, It really is. I don't get it, and I really hope that they put something in place next year to, hopefully not run into this situation. And I agree with you too. I mean, about giving the Monday night doubleheader, play an early game and a late game. I think that makes a whole hell of a lot of sense, especially if you're going to be playing on Saturdays now too, which we've got 2 Saturday games here this week. So we got 4 teams on short rest here this week playing on Saturday. 2 of them have some shot at the playoffs, although after how Denver looked last week, not so sure about that. But the first game here, game 303-304, Houston and the Jets. Houston laying 6 on the road in the Meadowlands. Jets off of that win, and you kind of inadvertently brought up a point that I didn't think about, but now I'm thinking about it a lot. The Jets wanted that game last week, and they are a team with some questionable motivation. Todd Bowles is gone no matter what they do the next 3 weeks. Was that kind of their Super Bowl, and do they sort of regress back now? Or do you think that now with Sam Darnold back, there's a little bit more incentive to play for the future?
Well, I mean, funny thing is, I think you could say, the Houston game was a big game too. And don't sleep on Indianapolis' defense. That was a real physical game. Watson took another beating in that game. Coming off that game, not the best for Houston either. But, yeah, I'm inclined to think, the Jets stepped up. And, listen, the funny thing is if you go inside the game, and I give the Jets full marks, Buffalo was a whisker away from just blowing them out. They got the lead. They're tilting the field on them. And as is always the case with the Bills, they gave up like a 95-yard kickoff return, and then they punched it in. So all of a sudden the game turned on a dime. I mean, the Jets were literally 2 minutes away from getting rolled again, and the Bills let them back in. Then they woke up, and then it turned into a nasty physical game. Maybe they're a tad fat and happy. And the one thing for Houston, probably upset that they let that one get away last week. But all of a sudden, that goofball play down in Miami, here's Houston going, really focus here the rest of the way because they got a legitimate chance of being the 2 seed and, getting a bye and getting a home game. I mean, there's a lot on the line motivation-wise. There's a ton on the line for Houston, not so much the Jets.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too. I mean, now you look at Houston here this weekend playing on Saturday. New England goes to Pittsburgh. We know that's going to be a mean and nasty game in the Steel City on Sunday. Houston picks up this win. Maybe they are in decent shape. Now, they did lose the head-to-head game against New England, but, hey, if they get that 1-game lead here and control their own destiny for a bye, that would certainly be a big help, especially when you talk about, as you mentioned, the beating that Deshaun Watson has taken this year. So, there's just so much going on in the NFL right now. It's really hard to cover everything, to a full extent. But this is an interesting game because, you have a Houston team here that a lot of people have been looking to fade. Their statistical profile really doesn't stand out in all that impressive of a way. They're +9 in turnover margin. You would expect that to regress. Even being +9 in turnover margin, they're only 12th in scoring offense in the NFL. They only have 8 rushing touchdowns this year. They're only 16th in yards per carry. They're a team that has kind of overachieved a little bit. People have been looking to fade them. Now they got that loss, and we're seeing the market fade them again this week. Houston's in an interesting spot, I think, from a betting market standpoint.
Well, and the thing with them, is you sit there and you look at the course they plotted to get here. First of all, they were like so under the radar with a 9-game winning streak. But it's amazing, one injury, and you're like, wow, really? It meant that much to them, but it really did. They found ways to win, but the Will Fuller injury really hurt this team. Because if you watch on a weekly basis, they're double and triple teaming Hopkins, and nobody else is doing anything. And Houston's success, if you can take what the defense gives you, they have to run the football game. Well, they have in certain instances. They didn't last week. But the Will Fuller injury really hurt Houston because as great as Hopkins is, everybody's kind of turning into Belichick against them. Everybody is trying to take Hopkins out of the equation. And it's up to Houston to find some other options. And they've been able to win games, but it ain't pretty, bud.
No, it really isn't. And speaking of not being pretty, the Denver Broncos, I mean, if you're right there in the playoff discussion, you cannot have a no-show like they had against the San Francisco 49ers. Apparently they just didn't realize that Matt Breida wasn't going to play and didn't realize that George Kittle is really the only guy you had to worry about for this 49ers offense right now because he had over 200 yards in the first half of that game. Broncos suffer a huge loss. Now they got to try and pick up the pieces on a short week to host the Cleveland Browns, who for the first time in what feels like my lifetime, but really about the first time in a decade, actually sort of on the fringes of the playoff race. They're not going to get there, but at least they're an exciting product, and they've been a lot more interesting to follow this season. They're only a 3-point underdog on a short week, traveling out to the thin air of Denver in Baker Mayfield's first career start in the Mile High City, and there is an adjustment period for quarterbacks when you talk about the altitude. So this is another one of those lines that kind of stands out to me.
Yeah, right here you got to be Dr. Phil on this one. I mean, what is the Broncos' mindset here? Because literally the door was wide open for them. The Niners, you get the Browns at home, you're at the Raiders, and then at the end, the Chargers' fate may have already been determined, and they may rest people, right? And the door was wide open for Denver to conceivably run the table and kick the door down, and then they did that. And I'm telling you, I watched this nonsense from a week-to-week basis. The Barkley kid, how misused he is with the Giants is beyond the pale to me. They get down to the 3-yard line, first and goal, and they always have Manning in the shotgun, flanked by Barkley, and okay, they're going to run it off left guard, and he runs off left guard and gets nothing because they know that's what they're going to do. Why don't you line up in the I formation? The guy can fly over the pile or pick his spot, and they don't do it. And Denver did the same thing last week. The week before, Lindsey had 157 yards rushing, and they get the ball at 3-yard line, and they're throwing every down. Like, what? Who calls these plays? Football drives me insane. Just these guys outthink themselves, get too fancy. And how about the Rams? Talk about insane. The Rams game. In a close football game, they took 2 timeouts with the clock stopped 3 seconds apart in the fourth quarter. I mean, even the Rams, as good as they are, and that coach as good as he is, who does this stuff?
I don't know, man. It's amazing. I've been following the NFL a lot, but I've been following it a little bit differently here this year. I tend to be a spot kind of guy, as we know from talking about the NHL and all that. But man, the league nowadays is it's so much about coaching and scheme and maximizing talent, and I just don't understand. I get you were trailing for most of the game. Okay, I understand that for the Rams, at least for a good part of that game, certainly in the second half. But it is cold. Your quarterback is all over the place. No timing whatsoever. Todd Gurley runs 11 times, and you throw 44 times against that Bears defense? Like, what the hell are you thinking? I mean, maybe you're trying to monitor Gurley's workload for the playoffs, and he is a guy that has had some injuries, so maybe that factored into the equation. But I just don't get how somebody like Sean McVay can do that. And then you look at guys like Vance Joseph and the coaching staff in Denver, they're just really bad. So maybe you come to expect things like that, but man, the coaching decisions in this league are just incredible.
I've been saying this, I swear to you, since I was 10. My brother's 11 years older than me. When I was a little kid, I mean, it's been his pet peeve his whole life, and I'm the same way. Timeouts are oxygen tanks. I mean, Aaron Rodgers does it. I mean, guys that should know better. It's like, it's 3rd and 17. 7 minutes to go in the third quarter. 3rd and 17. Timeout. What? Timeout? You're going to go take the timeout. You're going to come back. You're going to run a draw or a screen. You're going to punt. You don't have a 3rd and 17 play. Kansas City maybe does. They did that 4 times against Baltimore. It's like, take the 5-yard penalty and punt the football. How these guys just don't realize the value of these timeouts, and they can't. And the biggest one is when a team has a 10-point lead and they think take timeout, The other team can't come back and score. How many times, Adam, I watch these games, the team has a 10-point lead, you burn 2 timeouts for no good reason, other team scores, now you're down 4 with 1:05 to go at your own 10, and you got 1 timeout because you squandered 2 for no reasons. I shake my head every week, every game.
I'm watching.
I'm on a soapbox. You want another one?
Go ahead.
This is my other big one. Well, this is my big one. What game was it? Maybe the Atlanta game. It was a 3rd and 2 situation in the first quarter. No, it was the Houston game. He was throwing a pass to the flank on 3rd and 2, and the guy, I'm 2,000 miles away and 30 yards from a screen, and I'm like, the guy bobbled the ball. He bobbled the ball 2 feet in. He bobbled the ball, and then 1 foot went out. Like, that's incomplete. 2 guys, 2 side judges, 8 feet from it. They both, it's a catch. Like, what? It's a catch? It's so blatantly obvious it wasn't a catch. Anyway, so O'Brien challenges it. It's overturned. But I'm sitting there going, okay. In the first quarter on something that there's no way in God's green earth that should have been missed, at the end of the game, what if Houston needs a challenge? And they had to waste a challenge there because of the ineptitude of the officials. I don't care if the games take 20 hours to play. If you keep proving an officiating crew incompetent, why should a team ever run out of challenges? If you're right every time, it's on the crew. Why should the team be penalized?
No, I totally agree. I think that makes a lot of sense.
I feel better. Thank you.
Good. No, you're all good. I'm glad you got that out here today, Brian. Let's go over to the NHL side of things here, and some interesting things going on. I know we had somebody tweet at both of us over the weekend about the dad's trip and the net working out, and I texted you last week about a live betting spot with the Oilers because their dads were on the trip. How about we got a mom's trip here this week? The Toronto Maple Leafs will have their moms in tow in Tampa and in Sunrise this weekend, Thursday and Saturday. That's a huge game there against Tampa Bay. Big game for bragging rights in the Atlantic Division. Now I'm kind of looking at it. Initially, I was kind of thinking, maybe I like Tampa a little bit here. But with the moms on the trip, I can't take Tampa Thursday night. And also, too, the Ducks had one in late November, and they lost to Nashville, but then went to Florida and beat Tampa Bay and the Panthers. Penguins are on the dad's trip. They won last night in Long Island. If a team's got the family on a 2-game trip, and you mentioned this last week, that it's usually a 2-game trip, if they lose that first game, they do not want to go over with mom or dad in town.
That's true. And the weird thing about the Toronto one you're telling me, they're in Carolina tonight, and they're on a 4-game road trip. So I've never heard of this one because it's always a 2-game hop. So I don't know if they're flying the moms down there to meet them.
So
that's weird.
Here's what I saw. I guess there's like a mom's watch party for the Carolina game tonight, and then they're going to charter the moms down to Florida for Thursday's game.
Okay. So now last week we had Edmonton went 2-0, Calgary went 2-0, and God bless social media and how big a thing this is. The hard part is finding out. Sitting here minding my own business on the weekend, and the Rangers tweet out a picture of the Delta Airlines actually tweeted it out. The dad's on the plane with the Rangers flying to play, and they were plus $1.70 Saturday night down in Florida, and Lundqvist stood on his head in a shootout, and the Rangers won plus $1.70. Then played Tampa last night. They were plus 210. Said, boy, that's a bad spot. Plus the Rangers got the first win. But I know I was telling people on the weekend, know this, the Rangers are putting all their eggs in this Florida basket because they know they got a tiger by the tail, and they don't want to go 0-2 on this trip. So the Florida one, it was a nail-biter, but it got there. This is one of the greatest betting angles in the history of sports wagering, period.
Yeah, it's really good. And when you talk about, like you said, if it's a 2-game swing and the team's going to be a dog in both of those games, like the Rangers were going to be down there in Florida, play them both. You're going to probably wind up splitting and taking a little bit of profit with the big plus money price. So Tampa or Toronto here on the other hand, they'll be a dog against Tampa Bay on Thursday. They should be a favorite against Florida on Saturday as long as everybody gets through that Tampa game healthy. But, man, you got to keep that angle in mind. Very, very interesting there with the mom's trip, which maybe in some respect, I don't know. I mean, I don't know which one's a better angle between the moms or the dads.
Same thing.
They're both good. They're both very, very good.
Same thing. The moms may be even bigger because I know one team did it a couple years ago and they went 2-0. I mean, mostly it's the dads, but the moms, the moms, the dads, whoever. The moms, let's cut to the chase. The odds are the moms probably more often than not were the ones that got up at 5:30 in the morning and took the kids to the rink. It may be even bigger with the moms.
Yeah, I know for me it was both of my parents. And, I imagine a lot of NHL guys have similar stories. And, I mean, it's such a good angle. I mean, we can't – I don't think we can overstate how good of an angle it is.
The funny thing is, the dads go out and howl at the moon. And so you got to be leery of, because I think, Vancouver come in here and won, right? And the players went to bed. The dads went out and howled at the moon. Players came in here. Vancouver walked into Vegas and won. But the funny thing is with the moms, you can see these guys it's the mom's trip, and the moms are telling the players the night before the game, go to bed. The dads are going to go out and have pops with them.
Yeah, it's fun. I love that the NHL does that. I love a lot of the things that the NHL does, but I love that NHL teams do that. It's definitely something that I'm sure the players enjoy, and obviously it's good for us from a betting standpoint as well. One game I do want to ask you about here tonight, Brian, Edmonton and Colorado, game 61-62, the last one on the board. Edmonton off of playing Calgary on Sunday. I know you said you had that spot circled, given how the first game went between the two teams. You looking to fade the Oilers tonight?
It was a great game, by the way. It wasn't kind of the bloodbath that the first one was, but it was played at a real high level. Hitchcock's doing something with these guys. He's got their attention. They're on a 3-game winning streak. This Colorado team is coming off a lot. I think it's a good game. It's not one that's on my radar, to be honest with you, but I think it's going to be a really good hockey game. I think at the moment you could believe in both teams, and so to me it's one you sit back and enjoy. But Colorado's the real deal, and if they stay healthy, they're going to be good for the long haul here. And Hitchcock has really shored things up. The matchup, the weird thing is, from a pace of play perspective, these are two fast teams. The difference with Edmonton from one year to the next, hockey ain't that hard to figure out. It's like show up, give a big effort, defense, or show up with a good effort, and then it's goaltending and special teams. Well, the difference, one of the big differences, they tighten things up on their own end, but Edmonton is finally getting serviceable goaltending. I mean, Talbot couldn't stop a medicine ball last year. The Koskinen kid, he's playing great.
All right, so we'll talk about the Christmas break here on next week's show because that's 2 weeks from yesterday. Obviously, Christmas 2 weeks from today. So the NHL dark for 3 days then. We'll talk about that betting angle next week. Real quickly here, Brian, before I let you go, college football bowl season starts on Saturday. I believe the next game after that is Tuesday then. Any general overview points you want to make on the bowl season real quick to wrap things up?
Our video that we're going to get to you later today will focus on Saturday's bowl games. But it's a unique dynamic. I mean, you got the Las Vegas Bowl, and their star wide receiver, Harry's not going to play. And there are about 8 guys that are basically saying, big-time players. Greer with West Virginia. I'm going to the draft. I'm not playing. Then you got interim coaches. You got an interim coach in the Tulane, Louisiana game. You got to look at the coaches, the motivation. This is really – and then you look at coaches, who's good with extra time to prepare. I know right out of the gate I'm going, you're giving me 3-4 weeks with Patterson and TCU to prepare for a team as bad as they've been. I like the coach. I think you want to watch. It happens every year. If the MAC has always struggled in bowl games, but if a conference is playing overachieving in a couple early bowl games, maybe it flatters teams from a certain conference down the road. there's a lot of horse racing mentality in here in terms of the company you keep. It's like March Madness. Is the conference playing well? Are they all getting upset and knocked off, or are they pulling off the upsets? And if a couple teams in a conference are doing well, it flatters the conference, and why not use it as at least a starting point, or at least refer to it in a future game?
Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. How can people find those two shows, Brian?
Okay, Adam, thanks, man. You can follow me on Twitter at Brian Blessing. The show, Sportsbook Radio, Vegas Hockey Hotline, noon to 2 Pacific time, KSHP.com. And there's an app, KSHP Las Vegas. Shows are archived at sportsbookradio.com. And today we're going to be getting you some videos on what we're anticipating from a line movement perspective on the NHL or the NFL in the home stretch. But we'll focus on Saturday's bowl games because I think there are a lot of little hidden nuggets as we get bowl season started this Saturday. Not a lot of marquee games, Bud, but I'm telling you, I think there are a lot of goodies in here that make a lot of sense. And we'll talk about those on a video that we'll be getting to you today at BangTheBook.com.
Brian Blessing, Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline, the shows at Brian Blessing on Twitter. Appreciate the time as always, Brian. Thank you so much, man, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Hey, Adam, always a pleasure, my friend. Have a good day.